What's good, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Outside the Clutch, episode 16. Tonight, we're going to be talking to a guy, true OG, a guy that's been in the industry for 20 years, seen a lot of things, done a lot of things, um, found a way to really build his collection and build a specific morph into something that everyone admires. Um, I think that you're going to get a lot of knowledge from this. I think that you're going to get some laughs, some stories that hopefully you may not have heard before. Y'all give it up tonight for our guest, Mr. Tom Barnhart of Tom Barnhart Ball Pythons. How you doing, sir?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Heck yeah. So what everyone does this question, and I think you have to start it on a podcast like this, right? And we said we're not going to do it too much, but the one thing, like, where'd the love of reptiles come from, and specifically ball pythons?
Just I guess ever since I can remember when I was like little, just outside, you know, whenever I'd find like a frog or a toad, I'd catch it, keep it for a week or two, try to feed it, and then let it go. So it was always just had an interest in, when I go fishing, I'd stop fishing and start looking for frogs and turtles and stuff. It was more exciting to me than like going fishing. And, snakes were right in there. They were, a little bit harder to find at the time, but when I did find them, I didn't have a fear of them. I would kind of do, you kind of just gently from the back end try to pick them up. And they were mainly just garter snakes, water snakes, and black snakes, stuff that's like in Maryland that's, harmless. But
Okay.
just one of those things that you don't know why, but I always had an attraction to reptiles and amphibians growing up. So um, I guess it just went later into life. I bought a king snake when I was in college. I was probably 20, and that it lived 25 years. It actually just passed away last summer. So
That's crazy.
yeah, it was yeah, that was just a pet. I had nothing. I just thought it was cool. It's an albino California king. I got it back in like '95, and it had a pretty long run.
Okay.
But yeah, that's just been interested in like reptiles and amphibians my whole life.
So just being in the outdoors brought the love of herping, and then what
Yeah,
specifically brought you to ball pythons?
yeah. Because like I said, mainly fishing a lot as a kid. I loved going fishing, and then I loved seeing all the stuff that lived around the water. If
Yeah.
the fish weren't biting, if the fish were biting, it was fine. But when they weren't biting, I'd start to explore the banks, and then you'd see all kinds of other things that were even like more interesting than the fish. And that's where I think I kind of got hooked. So yeah,
And was it one of those things where, like, once you started in with getting your pet, did you like really start diving into like the reptile magazines, or
like
what brought you to the industry, I guess, is what I'm trying to
okay,
figure out. Yeah.
so I had this pet, and this was probably about 5 years later, or no, it was about 6, 7 years later after I had the king steak. I knew about one site online at the time, back in the late '90s and early 2000s. It was kingsnake.com, where you could go and look at classifieds for other snakes. But I was working the graveyard shift at a biotech company in Maryland, and you'd work 11 at night to 7:30 in the morning, and it was kind of cool. I mean, I was young, single, no kid. Well, I had a girlfriend, but not married, no kids, and it was a good schedule for me because I was a night owl anyway. So I was sharing an office with a guy who was also working in a different department during the nights, and one of the two of us was on King Snake. I forget who it was, but the other one noticed, and they're like, we kind of introduced ourselves a little bit more. We knew each other from work, but we're like,
Right.
you're into snakes, and it's like, yeah. And this other guy was Oz, and he goes, yeah, I have a couple ball
There's no way.
pythons,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
and a couple boas. So like I met him just by chance, but it was such a cool way because we had known each other anyway from work. And I don't know if we had gone out to any happy hours at the time yet, because we just started, in the same office.
Okay.
And shortly thereafter, we knew we both liked snakes. and he had an amazing collection of normal ball pythons and a pastel. And I think he didn't have an albino yet, but he had a couple of boas. And I say that like sarcastically compared to what he has now. But I think he had maybe 3 normals, a pastel male he just got, may have had a hypo, and then he had a big, at least a pair of Colombian red tails. And so we'd go over to he lived right down the street. I was about 40 minutes away, my house from our work. So during lunch, you sit in the break room and not eat because it's the middle of the night. But like we go to his, he had a townhouse about a mile down the road, and this is where all the snakes were. So he had maybe a rack or 2 and the boas. So we'd look at him at night, and then I got hooked when I started talking to him, and he started telling me about you can make money and breed. You should see the morphs and the colors, like, because he showed me a pastel, and I was like, holy cow! It's like I've never seen anything like this. And he's like, you should see all the other stuff. He's like, you got to go to an expo with me. And I'm like, okay. And this was October of 2002, and the Valley Forge NARBC was happening that month. So we met at work on a Saturday early in the morning and drove up to Philly we're in Maryland. So we were like in mid Maryland, and 2.5 hours north of Philly. And we went to the Valley Forge NARBC, and it was really cool because Bob Clark was there, Ralph was there, and he had just his lessers and some Platy Daddy and some lessers on the table, not selling. And this is when they just hit, like, this was like groundbreaking new stuff to the industry. And I don't think he had figured out yet how the whole Platy gene worked, because it's kind of complex with like the normals from that would make the Platy Daddy. I think if you bred it back a certain way, I never really got into it, but I knew there was a weird combination of genetics going on there. But then he had the lessers, which was like a lesser degree of the original platinum that he got in. But he was there and just showing off stuff. And Brian Barczyk was there. He was the front. As soon as you walked in, he had a big horseshoe set up, kind of like he used to do at all the shows. But I went up there with maybe $1,000, and I decided, Oz told me, he's like, get females. He's like, you got to get your females first because they take longer to grow. And he's like, pick something you want to work with. And I go, albino. That seems good, because they were going for about 2,500-ish a piece at the time. And I'm like, they just stand out. They're yellow and white snakes with red eyes. They were cool. And I had that albino king snake, which was a yellow and white snake with red eyes. So I was kind of attracted to those colors. So I got a head albino from Barczyk that day. I think I paid $700 for it, which is crazy for a head albino female. No, in 2002. And Oz actually bought a pair of albinos, and I think he got them cheaper because he bought the pair. And we came home from that show, and then from there it just kind of snowballed. That was my first ball python, and it was cool because I got to see. That was a nice show. That was an NARBC. It wasn't like a local little show with local event, not the big names with the big guns. I mean, right. Barczyk had all kinds of stuff at the time. He had the most on his table, but I was there either looking for pastels or albinos. The pastel was the other thing I was looking for, but I think we found some, but they were a little pricey. So I went with the head albino option. And then from there, I think I had Oz. He would go to all the shows. I'm like, pick me up some captive hatched females from Hamburg. He'd get them for, depending on what they look like, $10 or $25 a piece. Typically, the captive hatched females were running a little bit more than they were, like in the 25 range. And if they looked a little different, you'd pay upwards of like 50. But he got me 4 or 5 of those at one show. And then I had him pick me up a hypo. Because like I said, at the time, this is the difference between him and I was probably doing, I don't know if I worked a lot of overtime on weekends because I got paid time and a half, and it was easy. You had to do about half the work you did during the week, and you get paid time and a half. So it was a no-brainer. And so I'd work Saturdays and Sundays. So I don't know if I was working or I was just being lazy, and knowing that he was going to shows, I'd be like, pick this up. If you find, because he would get a lot of packages. He started buying more in bulk, and then he would take what he had, keep the good stuff, and then raise up the other stuff and sell it. So he would get a lot from Outback Reptiles, and he would also get down to Ian's place in Fairfax, and Ian would be like, I got a shipment coming in next week from Africa. And Oz would go down. I'm like, find me a male hypo, which was kind of dumb at the time, because what am I going to breed it to? I have a bunch of baby females. but again, my brain was working not like a seasoned, ball python breed. I
You
was
did like all of us, where we were like, oh, I like this, and I like this, and I like this. Let me grab them all. And
yeah. So, and
yeah,
I got in the same time frame. You're talking about 2 or 3 months. I also got a male pastel, which again makes 0 sense to get your male when all your females are literally like 100, 200 grams. It doesn't. It's just they're just going to sit there. But it
right.
was cool because I wanted to get them. I just wanted to have them in my possession so I could look at them and have some morphs too. I wanted to have some visuals, not heads, not normals. It kind of motivated me a little bit. So started off with that, and every year I'd add a little bit to it. And I think I'm trying to think that was kind of my start in 2002. Then in 2004 is when I got my first clutches, and they were hypos. And surprisingly, back in 2000, that sounds like such a stupid clutch. Hypo male to a bunch of normal females. I grew up those ones from 2002, and they were ready to go. But I mean, het hypos again. This is for somebody that's just starting, and they were selling females for like $300 to $400. I want to say in 2004, which again, that's crazy money for snakes that you just hatched out from a $600 hypo or $700 hypo you bought 2 years ago. You're like, well, I paid for my initial investment. Now I'm paying for my food, and then you start to look at like I'm making a little bit above
You're in
what
the
I'm.
green instant.
Yeah,
Well, like
yeah,
within your first year of breeding, that's crazy.
yeah, and even cooler that year, I got I think 2 clutches of pastels, which was a pastel male to normals, and maybe hatched out like six pastels, kept a couple females, sold all the males and like one female maybe. But again, you're talking, shoot, I can't even think. In 2004, probably 600, 700 for a male, upwards of 1,000 for a female. And again, that's crazy. That's good money to me for something that's a hobby. It's fun. I'm not really heavily invested in it, and it was mind blowing that people were buying it. And the weird part is now, and this just kind of happened organically, I think, like over the years of selling, people got to know who I was from forums. And I mean, we'll get to the Black Pastel stuff in a little bit, I think, but
Mm.
mainly because of that right now. But people just start to see you, trust you. Your name's out there so much, and there's no negatives involved on the internet that people are like, okay, I'll buy from you. I'll buy your heads. And I look at it back then that it was harder because nobody knew who I was at the beginning, and you had a lot of just tire kickers, people wanting to trade. Everybody people don't really trade as much anymore, which is a good thing because I don't want to trade. I want to if I want that animal, I'll sell and then I'll buy it from somebody or I'll buy it from you. But
Right.
it's very rare do we have the perfect scenario where I want that. I'm very specific with what I pull in now. I'm not. I mean, it's got to be. Typically, it's not on Morph Market, but if I see it, I'd have to have the coincidence of that person who has a great collection probably wants something from me that's very specific. So it can happen every once in a while, but I'd rather just sell. It's just easier.
What
But
was
back
one of
in
your
the day,
favorite things back then? Like your morph selection back then was very limited. So
yeah,
what's like one of the things that really brought the excitement for you in that time range? Because I think 20 years ago we were looking at, what was it, around,
the
I
big
think
one was
like
Pied.
10.
Yeah, yeah. The biggest morph out there was the Pied, and then like the pastel Pied. And I mean, that was crazy. Axanthics were cool. I really was into VPI Axanthics. I thought that was the line that I worked with for a while because it seemed like they were the most silver, but I've seen some good. I mean, I know the MJ line's really good now, but that wasn't around then. And the Snake Keeper line I thought it was hit or miss depending on who did it. Sometimes I'd see really good ones, other times I'd be like, eh. But the Pied was the top dog, and clowns were around, but they weren't the best clowns that I saw at the time. Were I think Casey Lasik or Casey Lassick had uh, pastel clowns, or they were Enchi clowns, I believe. They're really reduced pattern. They were cool.
Okay.
But the thing that really got everyone's attention was the $10,000 pies, and that was in 2002. And you're like, holy shit, like that's what I want. And even the heads were a lot. And you know what else was cool was caramel albinos. I was really in love with the caramel albino project. And this was early when people was still kind of the flaws and issues weren't out there. You didn't know about that yet. You just saw a nice kind of coppery, rusty orange looking snake. And I'm like, the caramel glow was like, that was my dream snake. I wanted to make that. And the funny part is, in the early years, I was pursuing that project pretty hard. And right when I was getting to the point where I was going to start to make them is when the kind of wheels fell off the caramel. People just stopped buying it because all these issues were coming out. So I just sold everything I had. I was like, I don't, and I was getting some kinking as well in some of my breedings. And I just started to, I had built up this nice little collection to make those double visuals recessives, which were cool. And this was back in the mid 2000s, late 2000s.
That's
And I
crazy.
thought this would be great. But then I just probably around 2010, 11, I just got out of it. Now what I wish I would have done at that moment is go right into Ultramel, because I was like, well, Ultramel seems to be the safe bet, similar to caramel. I like it better. I mean, the look of it better now, but I didn't. I waited years to get it back into that look, and I wish I would have done it now, because I have an Ultramel female right here that, she was the first one I got to get back into that look, and I mean, she's a great female and everything, but I wish I would have, like, that's the thing. I wish I would have done things sooner. Same with Desert Ghost. I have some Desert Ghost, but I mean, hell, I just got into it recently. I wish I would have got into it like 5, 6 years ago. But it's funny how
What's
certain
something you
things.
would say to people like when you've been around this long, you kind of, I don't want to say regrets, because I think it's more learning
They're
points.
learning. Yeah, they're learning.
Yeah.
Definitely. I don't. I mean, sure, you regret some things, but you look at it as a positive. Like, you learn something, and now with that knowledge today, um, maybe I was hesitant to spend money back then, and for good reason. Because again, it's still kind of weird, because I was a small fish in a big pond. Is anyone going to buy? And here's the fear that I used to have a lot. That I think, and I tell this to some of my newer customers. I'm like, no one's going to buy a $3,000 or $4,000 snake from me. They don't know me. It's just going to sit there, and I'm going to have a whole rack of these expensive snakes that I can't move. And I don't want to ruin projects. I don't want to be the asshole that has the $3,000 snake marked down to 1,000.
Right.
And then it's like, I tell people today, the snake will sell itself. Those high dollar, high value, high desirable snakes will get you noticed. From there, it's on you. I can't coach you how to be like, you got to be a good person. You have to be likable. You can't be an asshole. You can't cheat people. But if you produce these snakes and you show them off in a good way, don't show them next to like a dirty ashtray or something like that. Take good pictures, put them out there, be nice, be willing to answer questions, be friendly, be forthcoming to what comes your way. And these snakes will sell, because people are buying the snake, but they're also buying a little bit of like the seller too. I mean, we all know sellers that we're going to avoid, and we know ones that will buy it in a heartbeat. Like, I know the genetics are there. I know it's a het for this. I don't even have to question what the parents are. I don't care. If you say that's what it is, just send it over. So you want to get into that area. But the thing I tell people now is, I mean, what's your budget? And then here's what I would do. I would go for the most recessives you can pack into a snake. Get a bunch of females with like 2, 3. I mean, 4 is a lot for a new person, but 2 and 3 gene hets. Try for that, and then go buy the male the next year. Try to buy a visual. Like, I have a friend of mine. He bought a clown female from me. I'm like, go buy a Desert Ghost combination, whatever combo you want. Now, affordability wise, if you want to stay under a certain amount, you're looking at maybe Enchi, Yellow Belly. You can't get a ton of male visual Desert Ghosts for under 1,000 with another gene. There's only a handful. Take that, breed it to the clown, cross your fingers that you get a bunch of females, and then try to hit, hopefully you get some females with the dominant codom gene as well. Do that for a year or two, just get an army of females, then go buy a male. And if you can't afford like a Desert Ghost clown, which is understandable, get a Desert Ghost het clown or a clown het Desert Ghost. Because I try to avoid doing my goal back in the day with the Caramel Glow project was double het male to double het females. I look at that today as just daunting. I was like, I would not do that just because it would take so long. You need so much rack space. Then you're producing all these 66% heads. And it's something I don't want to go down that road. I'd rather spend up and get at least one of the visual genes, if not both,
Right.
ideally. But that's what I tell people now. I'm like, again, the snake will sell itself if it's a desirable, cool snake, but don't be an asshole. Don't get on the forums and fight with people. I mean, you can. I mean, the people that do that, more power to them, but I don't really find it makes them a more sellable,
Right. Do you
seller.
think it's over the last 20 years watching this, has it remained kind of faddish with the people that come in and out? Do you see, like back
I
then,
don't
were you seeing people drop a bunch of money and only stay around for a couple years and then
It's weird.
drop out?
At the beginning, no. There was it seemed to be a stable group at the beginning of the run for the first 10 years up until about 2010. Then 2010, 11, you had a lot of people in it that started to get some momentum behind them. Because I went to Tinley a few times and I would meet people that I knew on Bush League Breeders Forum. I can't even remember what the hell the exact name was, but it was an old forum that we used to get on, and I'd meet people there, and at the Tinley show, and it was nice. There was a lot of people that were like mid-level. They were coming up. They were doing well. This was Oz was mid-level, so I'd help vend his table sometimes. And then one time I got a table beside him, which was good because he got all the Orange Dream traffic, and then I had some Black Pastel stuff right when it was starting to hit. So it was a nice combo of like his runoff would come over to me, and I had a little display. It wasn't anything huge, but it was good to showcase some of my combos at the time, and it got me a lot of sales later. But then there was a weird run probably after 2010 through maybe the next 2016, 17. I think a lot of people got in and out then, and there were some people getting in. I take that back. Right around before 2010 for money, they'd come in, they'd invest, they'd buy a bunch of ball pythons, they'd try to. And here's where they went wrong. And here's, if you look back at it, you could take cinnamons, Mojaves, pastels, any codom dominant gene snake and breed it to an army of females. And that's what they did. They get an army of big normals, adults, get everything they could get. And at the time, big adults were a couple $100 for an adult normal. Then they just mass breed and try to make like, you get 4 cinnamons out of this clutch, and they're going for, and at that time, say $1,000. There's $4,000, but they were doing it on such a large scale. It messed with the dynamics a little bit of the people like me and the other guys that I'd do some cinnamon, I'd do this and that, but I was trying mainly for combinations.
Right.
But some of the byproduct would be a single gene cinnamon or whatever. I couldn't sell it as easily because there's a gazillion of them online now, and there's nothing special about them. They were just one of 100 cinnamon on King Snake. Mojave, same way. It all came crashing in probably 2008, and I got scared in 2008. I would talk to Oz routinely. I'm like, man, I just don't know. I don't know all the stuff I'm producing. Everybody's producing it. Like, and that's something that goes back to what I would tell someone today. If you're getting in, don't jump into the big pool with what everybody's doing. Even though I said Desert Ghost Clown, a lot of people are doing that, but it's not easy to hit. And it's still a very valuable snake. So you can take that in many different directions depending on what you layer onto it. I mean, hell, I'm doing it. I'm doing Desert Ghost Clown stuff, but I'm putting Black Pastel, Leopard, Yellow Belly all into that too. And that's kind of like the edge. But even if I just hit Desert Ghost Clowns, I'm still going to be excited as shit just for that, because that's a cool combo. But that's what I tell people. Differentiate yourself a little bit. Think outside the box. Don't just follow everybody else. And that way you'll stand out. But where I was going to with the timeline, 2015, 16, 17, shit really started to get, sales started coming easier. And it seemed like that was a nice influx of the industry of new people that I think most of them are still around now. Cause I see them online. They have podcasts. They're on Facebook. I mean, in Facebook, I started probably around 2012. Didn't want to, but everybody at that Tinley show was like telling me, that's how you find me. Find me on Facebook. I'm like, okay. So I got home and I had my wife set me up a Facebook account because I was like, I want nothing to do with it. But it did help because it networked me a lot with people that I never would have like, communicated with, and it was a nice advertising tool, and it was a nice selling tool because you could sell all your shit on Facebook.
Yeah, back
And it would
before
sell,
they lost their
yeah,
crap on us.
yeah, it would sell fast too. Like,
Right.
because it just, you put it on your site, you put it on all these different groups, and it would just, I thought it went much faster than Kingsnake, because Kingsnake had the revolving pages where you're first in line at when you click it, you come back an hour later, you're on page 5. And it's like, you got to rely on somebody to just scroll through ad nauseum, like looking for a specific snake, and they might miss it. The cool thing now is Morph Market again has taken that Facebook void where you can't sell on Facebook. Morph Market completely allowed us to continue seamlessly, even better, like, because it's searchable, and it's like, it's such a nice tool. I get on it every day, and every day I get on, I have 3 specific snakes I'm looking for, and they're not common, but like every day, because I know they're going to go. One just sold. It was on, and I was thinking about it. It was 3rd in my list of snakes this year, and they're all kind of higher end, but I was like, I want to see what I produce too, and then I want to buy a couple key males. And but it's great because you can go in and you type in exactly what you want to see, male, female, hatchling, whatever, and go. And I check the newest, the latest stuff for a couple pages. I'm like, well, maybe I missed it, so I'll search this. And I do a couple searches every day, and that's like my work in the snake world, other than the physical cleaning and everything. But that's my morning routine.
I love what John's done with it, man. John has created a website unlike any other, and he's always improving on it. Like the hours that man puts in is ridiculous.
It's cool. The stats too. Like, you can see your sales and all that stuff now. I mean, I got an email the other day from him. I guess it was a mass email to send out, because I know Bob posted his stats, which blow mine out of the water. Because I mean, he's huge. But it's cool to see, like, this is what your average sales at one time are on your page. This is what you sold in 2021. So it's definitely a nice, it's just crazy amount of information, and crazy easy to use. Right. So that's kind of taken up for the Facebook. And in all honesty, since you can't sell on Facebook, I just use it as kind of like marketing, just to say that I'm still out there and alive. I'll throw a snake on there every so often. And I do Instagram a little bit too. Again, I'm not someone that's on there all the time, but I just want to stay a little bit. I want people to see my name every couple of days or every couple of weeks. It gets a little bit dry at certain parts of the season when you're not hatching anything. So I'll take some grow outs and show pictures of some cool stuff that I've already shown pictures before, but I'll take a picture outside and show it,
And we were talking about it a little bit before the show. You're smaller than a lot of people that have been doing it as long as you. I feel like you've stayed honed in and really focused on your projects versus, well, I know these sell and these sell and these sell. Why did you choose to stay at the level that you're at, and what kind of piqued you to work those specific projects?
I mean, that's a good question, because I could make up a good answer and say that I chose to stay at this level, but it was well, I mean, shit, I can always make space. You always have rooms you can convert into snake rooms and that kind of stuff. But it's not laziness. It's more like I don't want to overstep my comfort zone, I guess, is what I'm saying. And it works for me because, like you said, because of that, I am very good with keeping in tune with everything that I have, and keeping it refined, and keeping a very I have a very narrow project that I work on. I don't have multiple genes and things that I can work with, and that's kind of to my detriment, because I think where that hinders me is, obviously my Black Pastel stuff has taken off, and in it I was in denial at the beginning, because people would be like, oh man, there's something different there. I'm like, nah, it's just a Black Pastel. It is what it is. I was trying not to be that guy, because everybody was that guy. With my normal has an extra spot on his tail, so it's clearly got something going on. And look, it produced a baby. It produced 100 babies, and 2 of them had this spot. So I was trying to avoid that whole situation, to the point where I probably screwed myself.
I'm sorry. I'm not gonna lie, I did that to my wife today. I was like, so I bought a collection from a friend this year, and we decided that we could scale that, and he's getting out for the time being. And I was like, well, if they're in my hands, that they're going to stay in my hands for right now. You decide to come back, you have the opportunity to get your collection back, right? But I was looking at one of the females, and I was like, this girl's a normal, but she has dots on either side of her nose that I've never seen before on a normal. It's like, what is that? Like, pointing it at my wife, and I'm like, what is that? I've never seen that on a normal. So the fact that you brought that up today is just
Well,
it's
it's
hilarious.
weird though, because like you do learn things that sometimes that works out, and you're like, holy shit, that little trait that like you've overlooked for years, that means something. And my eye's not that good in terms of spotting that stuff. And that's probably, again, I look at Justin. I was just watching his Kraken 3.0 video today. And it's crazy when he holds a snake. And that's just an example. And he's like, it has this, this, and this in it. And I'm like, I can see 2 of those or 3 of those genes. I'm like, but he sees so much. He has so many examples to go off of in real life, not online, in real life. And that's kind of, I'm learning so slow because you have a small collection. That's to my detriment. Like with a small collection, you just don't get to see volumes of examples, and you don't get to pick up that stuff that like Bob Vu and Justin and all these big breeders and Oz with the Orange Dream stuff. A lot of times he'll show me something. He's like, I know it's a super, or I know it's this. I'm like, I don't know, man. What if it's a high OD, or what if it's a super enchi OD? Like it all starts to look the same to me once you start stacking a bunch of genes in. And that kind of scares me from doing certain projects, honestly, because I don't want to make super high end stuff that I can't identify, because I want to look like a bozo because it's my snake. But also I'm going to be underselling everything. I want to be selling, like I say, a $10,000 combo for 5 or 4, because I don't know what it could be. This, it could be that. So I want to charge you much lower because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I've had myself in that position. I don't like it because I don't think it's good for the industry for me to undersell anything way under its value by not knowing. So if I'm not educated enough, or I can't get a good feel of it, I'm just going to avoid it. And again, that probably hurts me more than it helps me. But I like to see what the hell I'm identifying. And again, it's volume. I think it's just practice. It's like anything. I know how to take care of a snake. I know how to feed it, how to do all the basic, keep it alive, get it to breed, get the eggs to hatch, fine. But when it comes to like genetics that I'm not familiar with, when I pull in a new gene, like for example, I want to get some red stripe stuff. Just because I like the mix with Black Pastel. I think it makes a nice, cool snake. And there's so many directions you can go with that. I posted a snake on Instagram and Facebook this week. It was a Black Pastel yellow belly het clown male holdback that I have. I would never hold a male Black Pastel yellow belly het clown. There's no point. I have 3 visual clowns of that combination, visual. But this male is crazy looking, and it's got such a pixelated pattern, and it's so orange that I was like, I can't let this go. Whatever the hell's going on with this snake, I've got to see if it's reproducible. But where I was going with that is, I also look at that snake. I'm like, okay, it's yellow belly, it's Black Pastel. It needs Orange Dream. It needs red stripe, cypress. All these genes come to mind, like just to make it pop even more, or what could make that even go to the next level. And I think the way red stripe interacts, it adds like a reddish orange tone, and it's a pattern changer too. I think that kind of stuff would be crazy. So like, there's certain genes that I still don't have that I want to pull in. And also I didn't get red stripe because a few years ago I was talking to Levance from Straight Fire. He bought some stuff from me, and this is right when Justin proved the Pompeii. He revealed the genes of the Pompeii, and it was like, holy shit, Black Pastel yellow belly clown. And I had like a little army of hets growing up here, and I was telling Levance, I was like, man, I switched all my breedings around this year to make more hets of Black Pastel yellow belly het clown and visuals, whereas I was going in different directions. I wasn't going that way. But when Justin revealed the Pompeii ingredients, I'm like, I'm not going to chase the Pompeii because that's not my project. That's his. Right, I want to sell to people in like starter kits for the Pompeii. Like, here you go. Here's a Black Pastel yellow belly clown. You go get the spot nose red stripe clown or het clown, and you make it. But I had such a good start that I knew that I could make a nice little handful of that. And that got me a lot of sales to then go buy other things, which was kind of cool. But like I was saying, I was telling Levance, I'm not chasing it, but now I am. Now I want to make a Pompeii with my line. And that's just a difference in mindset of a few years ago versus today, where I'm like, Black Pastel, mine's good, but I'm not going to come out and say that it's the best. You know, I'll let the market dictate that. But I am
I think the
curious.
market. I'm not going to shit on everyone's projects, obviously, because I'm
Yeah,
a
I'm
newbie
not
and
saying anything.
I don't know anything. But I think with the sales and the way that people use it in their projects, you see the higher end projects, they want to see the Barnhart name put on that Black Pastel. I think it's starting to speak for itself.
And that's the thing. I just want to see, because I know Justin's produced a few, and I think Miguel has one or two. I'm sure there's a handful of people that have them. And they are hard to hit because I think there's four co-doms, and a recessive involved. But I still want to see if mine will influence it all. Because once you get a lot of genes, you probably can't tell the difference because you have so much stuff going on. But I'm curious to see if you can. And since I have a lot of spot nose, Black Pastel, yellow belly, clown stuff now, I'm one ingredient off. So it's why not, just
Right.
roll the dice. Plus I have some some ivory Black Pastel clown stuff, which is really cool because everything's going to be, well, at least het clown, everything's going to be yellow belly. And then it makes it easier. It makes it like a 1 in 8 with certain, if I get a certain snake, it's a 1 in 8 to hit on a Pompeii with an ivory Black Pastel clown. I think it is. I was doing the math the other day, but yeah, that's pretty good because that's the biggest thing is like try to make a lot of them. You can't because they're so hard. But
Jesus.
Yeah, it gets mind numbing because I start to go down these paths where I'm like, I want everything. And I want to be a big breeder. I want to be a dude with a facility with thousands of snakes because it is fun and I love hatching them out. It never gets old. 20 years into it, I still am excited. I have 3 clutches right now. I'm always behind in the season. I'll produce about 25, 26. I've hatched one, which was pretty cool. It was kind of a dinker clutch, but I have 3 in the incubator. And every time they hatch, I'm still like, I'm giddy to see what's coming out, especially the ones that like they're new mixes that you haven't seen before. And that's always cool. Not just to say you have a first, but to see what it looks like, to see if you hit on gold or it turns out to be a crap combination. And that's always interesting from a genetic standpoint. Like, man, I really thought that was going to be better. And it was kind of a bummer. Or I didn't expect shit out of this and it's just blown me away. So that's always, it's like gambling. It's like, right. But you always win, because you're hatching snakes.
And you said that initially you didn't even see the difference in the Black Pastel that you started working.
Not at the beginning. Yeah.
What did they initially like? What did your friends that you were bringing over show you, or what were the customers telling you that they were noticing?
It was basically when I did buy it, I did notice it was a very pretty Black Pastel. Oz and I, this was my first big purchase. I told you about those $600, $700 ghost het albino stuff that I was buying earlier. So I think it was 2005. I had my tax return came back, and I basically claimed nothing. So I got a big return back, which a lot of people, say you're letting the government borrow money for a year. But at the time this is what I was doing. So I got a big return back. Oz and I went down coincidentally in April. The African hatchlings are coming in, the captive hash and wild caught shit's coming into Ian's. So we went down, and before we went down, we were still working together. It was probably our last year in the same office. And he's like, I want to get it. And I go, I like the Black Pastels and the cinnamons. Because the pewter blew me away. I thought the pewter was the one of the prettiest, easiest snakes too. It's just a simple combination, 2 genes. And then I thought the super Black Pastel was really cool, as well as the super cinnamon, and the fact that you could breed those 2 together and get a black snake. I was like, this is awesome. Like these snakes, they're so versatile, and just the look itself is nice, and there's so many combinations that you hadn't seen yet, but just pewter was awesome. Sterling and Silver Streak, is it? Whatever the combos were, the super Black Pastel and the super Pastel Black Pastel. So we decided, and he's like, yeah, I think you're right. Like I'm going to do the same. So a couple weeks go by, and I've been researching on king snake like big time. I'm on there. I'm on Fauna looking at pictures, and I'm like, I think I can tell the difference between the black pastel and the cinnamon. And I say that now, it sounds so stupid, but back in the day when it's all new, you're like, it's like when I first saw yellow belly, I'm like, I don't know what you're looking at. I have no idea. This is it an all white belly? What are we looking at here? Took me a while to pick that up, but same with black pastel and cinnamon. Like they kind of look similar, but then once you saw it, you're like, okay, black pastel clearly, cinnamon clearly. But I
It's
did
like what
research.
all the people are doing with like the T positive albinos right now, talking about the caramels and the ultramels and
Yeah,
monarchs, and everyone's starting
monarch. Yep.
fights, and they're like, well, if you see them in person, um, I mean, you could tell the difference if you put an ultramel and a monarch next to each other.
Yeah, it looks like the monarch's a little bit darker. I think not as
Mhm.
red, maybe more burgundy. But
Yeah,
in all
it's more
honesty,
of
I've
a
never seen one in person, so I've only seen pictures. But it looks like a whiter, creamier snake with a darker burgundy kind of in between. But yeah, so Oz and I went down to Ian's at Outback, and he had two. And in all honesty, one looked like a hybrid cinnamon black pastel, and the other one looked like a really granity, busy pattern orange black pastel. And it was night and day. One was like my dog's going crazy. I don't know if you can hear him. I'm in the
all
basement,
right.
and he's running around, or she. But so
I'm
I
surprised our new one hasn't tried to bust through the door yet. She's afraid to leave my hip right now, and she's all
uh,
130 pounds of her is not happy when I'm not in the same room.
yeah, my girl is just I have the door shut. I didn't want any distractions tonight, so she's going wild. But yeah, so we saw the two, and Oz was getting a lot of other stuff that day. So he was going down spending money. He was stocking up for the year with you know, some just cool captive hatch stuff. Always trying to hit on that import that's going to prove out, going to be that platinum with the lessers. Now obviously people knew what that Ralph knew exactly what he was getting.
Right.
Well, I mean, he knew he was getting a cool snake, but you're looking at all this crazy stuff from Ian. So Oz got a nice package, and because Oz got a nice package, we got a discount on the black pastels. We're 8,000 a pop, and Ian said you can have both for 12 if you want them. And we were like, okay, cool, $6,000 each. And Oz asked me, he's like, which one do you want? And I kind of was like, I mean, that's not really a serious question, but I looked at him. I was like, well, I mean, if you're really asking, I mean, this one's much better. I'll take that one if you don't mind. And I was being very like, you're spending all this cash. If you want this one, take it, whatever. He's like, no, you take that one. I'll take the other one, which kind of, it was a black pastel, but it just had more of a blocky, not jagged, more of a symmetrical pattern,
Okay.
which is cool, but it wasn't really, my eye was drawn to the craziness. So he took that one. He's like, we'll just trade a couple offspring, and that way we'll each have a little bit of each line, because they were captive hatched. Nobody knew anything about them. They just hatched an egg, sent over here, and that was all. We don't know the parents or anything. I mean, clearly looking at them, they weren't related. I mean, because they look like two different morphs.
Right.
So I had it, and then that was 2005. I want to say 2006. It was growing. It was feeding. It was doing well. It was acting normal. It was feeding normal. It was growing normal. It didn't have anything weird going on. It didn't breed. So I'm like, okay, first year male didn't breed. So then 2007, it was probably, it was over 1,000 grams. It was a nice male, feeding, didn't breed. And then as I went back to earlier in the conversation, around 2007, 2008, the market kind of had a little dip. We had like a mini crash, and it was right before the housing crash too, which is kind of weird. And this is when people were coming in and people saw money, and they just had dollar signs in their eyes, and they were like, and there really were people that had no freaking clue about ball pythons, but they're like, I'm going to breed ball pythons tomorrow. So they come in with money, they buy all this shit, and they mass produce. They would learn, because it's not really hard to breed ball pythons, or they get a partner. They're like, this guy knows how to do it. I'll be the finance guy. You be the guy that takes care of the snakes. I'll buy and pay for everything, and we'll just split it. And that happened. And that's what really took everything, especially the Mojave market really was the first one to get hammered, because Mojave's had a nice spike because of the blue-eyed Lucies. Everybody was like, paying top dollar for like the Lessers and the Platies and the Butters at the time. But then when we found out Mojaves could do it, I think Mojaves were one of the few snakes, and you see it every once in a while, that goes up in value. So like I said, in 2007, 2008, the market crapped. And in 2006, I didn't have production from that male. 2007, I didn't have production from that male. 2008, he bred, I think, 2 females. One was a big yellow belly. And the value of a Black Pastel at that time was in the couple hundred. It was in the mid hundreds, probably like $500, $600. And 3 years ago, I paid $6,000 for that male. And that's how the market corrected. Just because mass production single gene codoms, their value it plummeted. But fortunately, this was 2008, because I remember I got married that year, and right before I went on my honeymoon, these eggs hatched from the yellow belly, and she was a big older yellow belly. I mean, for me, she was like a 5-6-year-old yellow belly. She gave me like 8 eggs, and I got 3 of these things that were just crazy looking. And this was great, mind you. This is the first clutch I ever had from this male. Now, rewind a minute. Before that happened, I sold the male. I sold the original male to a guy in Ohio. I don't even know if I have the records anymore of who bought that male for cheap.
No.
I want to say I sold him for like around the $600 range in 2008, maybe $700. So this male that I spent $6,000 on in 2005, 3.5 years later, I sell him for less than like a tenth of his value, or right around a tenth of his value. Because I'm like, here's my deal. I'm like, he's a horrible breeder. He didn't breed much. He bred 2 females that year. I'm like, I'm just going to get a new one. They're $600. I want to go out and find one that I kind of got a dud. This guy sucks. I still want to do the project, but I want to get one that actually breeds and acts like a normal snake. Again, this one acted normally, just didn't breed. But I got the 2 clutches, and then out of this clutch of yellow bellies, I had 1.2 just phenomenal. They were Black Pastel yellow bellies. That's all they were, a simple 2 gene combo, but they were insane looking. And I'm trying to think, they're somewhere online. If you search Barnhart Black Pastel yellow belly, there's some old ass, probably ugly pictures, but in those pictures, you can see the oranges and almost burgundies and the stretched crazy pattern down the side, where it's not really decipherable as like the alien heads anymore. They're still online, I think, if you look in Google and stuff. But it was nuts, because I immediately started sending pictures to Oz. I'm like, what the hell is this? And he's like, holy shit. And this was right before I went on my honeymoon. So that's all I could think about. Like, the honeymoon was cool. We went to Italy, and it was a blast. But the whole time I'm like, I can't wait to get home, because these snakes were still in the egg, and you could still see them. And they were coming out like right as I was leaving. So I kind of set them up as best as I could. And when we got back, it was, they were all out, and I was like, this is freaking crazy. And that's when I was like, that's a nice combo. And those things, actually, I sold one of the females, I think, held a pair back of the 1.1. Yeah, 1.1. And from there, I started just reproducing them. I was like, the next year I had that male. I still had that male Black Pastel yellow belly, because I got rid of the breeder. He's gone.
Right.
He grew up, and ironically, he bred the first season, and he bred like 3 or 4 females. And then I did it again. I was like, holy shit, I made more. And at the time, I want to say they were selling for, oh man, they were selling for around, I think I was selling for like $1,500, which was a lot for that simple combination back in 2009. That was a lot of money. I was like, this is great. So that was kind of how it all started. But me, I was still looking online to be like, okay, well, I want to see other people's. And I was like, well, they don't look like mine, but maybe there's others out there that will look like mine. I kept like doubting that it was anything special. And it was almost like to kind of keep myself in check, maybe, and to keep me grounded, that I just had a Black Pastel, and kind of pissy that I sold the Black Pastel. It's gone, but I had its offspring. So I was good. I had like new life in the game. And 2011, I think it was, maybe 10, I was into the het red stuff, because I thought the het reds and the red axanthics from Corey Woods were another one. When you asked back in the day what I liked, I loved the red axanthics, and this was back in like the 2006-7 time frame. So Oz and I got some het reds, and we dabbled with that a little bit. We did some projects. We made some cool red axanthics. Like, we were one of the earlier ones that made red axanthics other than Corey. I know Ralph had some. but I thought they were cool because they were codom silver snakes. It was like you can make an axanthic, but codom, and obviously they don't grow up. They don't look the same. They're not silver as an adult. But what I did with that black pastel yellow belly is I put it on some het red females because I was like, I want to see what happens. And of course, I hit het red axanthic, black pastel yellow bellies, which was the onyx yellow belly. And that's another thing. This is back in history. Like at the time, though, it was cool as shit. Like if you Google onyx yellow belly, you'll see a lot of my stuff come up. And not ironically, but like not many people really followed that because I thought that was like a pretty cool looking snake. It was wild. Like the pattern was just crazy. Onyx in themselves are cool, but when you throw the yellow belly with my line, it was really, sometimes it'd be a pattern snake with just a thin stripe down the back, kind of like what GHI does mixed with certain, I want to say Mojave, but not that nice because the Mojave GHIs are real contrasty dark. This was more of a gray and silver, but it was wild looking at that time. You got to go back 12 years, 11 years from now. So it was a different scene. But actually, one of my snakes from those clutches was put in some Reptiles UK magazine, which I thought was cool as shit. I was like, man, I'm a nobody. And they're mentioning me in this UK Reptiles magazine. And it says Onyx Unleashed. And it was like a couple pictures of my Onyx stuff. And I think that's when the momentum started a little bit more with the black pastels. Now, the funny part, and I've never really told this story, is I bought it. I did tell a little bit, but like I bought a Lemon Blast from Oz in 2007 they were trying to do a Dulles NARBC. Like they had Tinley and, I think they had one out in California and they had a Dulles one. It didn't really work because it just didn't have the foot traffic. I guess it just wasn't a good location. But we did that show and he had a Lemon Blast on the table. And I was like, I really want a Lemon Blast. And this tells you how long ago it was. Like to say I really want a Lemon Blast sounds stupid now, but 2007, that was a cool combo. And so I sold some stupid stuff at the show. I don't even know, Ghost. I sold a bunch of stuff to Ian from Outback at the end of the show. And he paid me pennies on the dollar because he, basically he was buying the whole stuff. He's like, I'm not buying the market price. I want to give you like a low value so I can make money. And I got that. And that's how I'd sell some stuff to him every once in a while. But I made a couple bucks and then I bought this Lemon Blast off the table. And Oz didn't say anything until after I bought it. He's like, keep an eye on that one. He's like, I don't think it's Orange Dream, but it came from an Orange Dream clutch. So just when you hatch stuff out of it a year or two, just check it out. So of course, a year later, I had 2 or 3 clutches from that male and Orange Dream because that stuff was coming out and I saw the orange on the side. And this is when Orange Dreams had that resurgence. I believe it was right around the same time that he proved the super. He proved the super on like a spider. It was either a yellow belly spider super orange dream or a fire spider super orange dream, but it was insane looking. And when that happened was right around the time I was producing these orange dreams. And I was like, holy shit, this is my new calling. I'm going to be the Orange Dream #2 guy. And I'm going to go down that road. So I'm gearing I'm taking all my ammo and I'm taking it from the Black Pastel project and putting it into the Orange Dreams because the value, I mean, you're talking, I was getting decent money from my Black Pastel combos, nothing like, life changing, but it was cool for me. But that Orange Dream project, I was like, holy shit, I'm just going to like go crazy with that. And so I abandoned the Black Pastel project probably around 2012, 11 or 12 for about 4 years trying to make Orange Dreams. And then I got a banana from Oz. I traded him a bunch of Orange Dream stuff for a banana yellow belly female. He had it listed at $12K. And this was in 2012, $12,000 for a banana yellow belly female. And I gave him a bunch of cool Orange Dream stuff, because he could sell it better than me because he was the Orange Dream guy. And it came from his line. I mean, obviously everything did, but it came to me and I went back to him a couple years later. But I got this banana and I went all banana and all Orange Dream and all het red. And the Black Pastels were still kind of working, they never stopped. But that's a point in time where I wish I would have gone back and geared more of my efforts into what I'm working with today. That's kind of my bread and butter. And that's what I'm known for. So it's kind of funny how the Orange Dream was a blessing, but it was also a curse because it where I am now with, I guess, name recognition and ease of sales and stuff, I guess you want to say, I could have been there 5, 6 years ago easily.
Do
So
you think that's something that you see regularly in the market, though? Is like someone will produce something and all these people, not saying that you were just trying to chase money, obviously, but you were like, there's something here. I want to work this
yeah,
project and
I want to be in the
I want
hot
to make sure I
project.
get my
Yeah,
investment, right?
yep,
But
yeah. You,
I think a
it's
lot of
always good.
people see that and then just chase for too long, and then they spend so
Mhm.
much time switching back and forth through that
Yeah, that's the problem. I didn't focus like Oz did with the Orange Dreams. I dabble. I mean, I went as hard as I could with a small collection. We got to take everything with that mindset that I didn't have a facility. I had a room. So I went Orange Dream crazy, and it was good. It worked out. I mean, I had some pretty high end sales from the Orange Dream projects. I sold an Orange Dream spinner in like the mid 2000, like around that 12, 13 time frame for 7,500.
Oh.
An Orange Dream spinner, imagine today. Everybody hates Spider. They're the scourge of the industry. And a pinstripe, no one gets excited about pinstripes and an Orange Dream, 7,500 bucks. So like it was good. It was good money at the time, and I'm glad I did it because it definitely got me a cushion to start stepping up my game later down the road. But again, I probably would have been better if I stuck a little bit, if I 50-50'd it more and did a little bit Black Pastel. And here's a funny thing too. I saw another guy in the Midwest had my line of it wasn't the guy I sold the original male to. It was another guy. I sold a male Black Pastel to over the years. He bred it to an Orange Dream, and it looked like shit. Like it just kind of dulled out the Black Pastel. The Orange Dream you couldn't even really see. It was so
Hmm.
subtle. I'm never doing that combination because I had these two paths of Orange Dream and Black Pastel, and that's another thing too. Don't judge, make a decision off that like that off of one snake. And I saw this one snake, and I'm like, I knew it was my line, and I knew it was Orange Dream, and I'm like, I don't like it. I'll never do that combination, and I didn't until a few years back, and I kicked myself because Chris Herning, who's in Michigan, he does a lot of high OD stuff. He got my Black Pastel line. Oh, I want to say 4 years ago. I sold him a Black Pastel Calico OD, possible Yellow Belly. Undersold it to him because I just didn't think there was a ton of value in it. And he took that thing and he's making the El Diablo, the El Demano, all this crazy shit with it, with his IOD, Super OD, Black Pastel, Orange Dream Calico.
Right.
And it's freaking nuts looking, man. They're crazy looking snakes. And I can't I can't do that right now. And I sold him the male that he's just run like crazy with. I have a couple things in the racks where I can cross my fingers and pray and hope to reproduce that. But I do have something going for next year, or some grow ups that I can kind of get back in that game because I saw that I'm like, son of a bitch. I had all those ingredients and he's killing it. Like he's absolutely killing it with those snakes, and they're awesome looking. And it goes back to show you that just again, don't judge your project off one snake. Maybe find another example or two before you say I don't want to do that. Or just the thought. This is the difference between like Justin and I. He probably saw that stuff all the time. He's like, well, maybe if I tweak it with this, I can bring out this or that gene. And I know Kevin from Nerd was very good with describing. He'd show a snake and he'd be like, well, I want to put more green into it or more some weird color, and I'm going to throw this. Hidden Gene Woman is going to do this and that, and he was pretty good at like mixing those genes and getting close to what he thought he would get. Same with Justin. I know he surprises himself a lot, especially with like the Kraken, but he knows so much from so much experience, so much volume. It's all about the volume. But yeah, that's
What do you
another
think that
conversation.
happy medium is for something like that? Because obviously now you've got your line where you've been able to see the intricacies in it, and then you start placing it into combos and really. So when I guess, what do you think is like the magic number where it starts to click for you? Like you start to really understand what your gene's gonna do.
I mean, I think I know now. Like, I think I've convinced myself over the last few years because I do see people that produce the exact same combo, and I'm like, and it's kind of funny because some people produce like right now for me, what's hot from the Pompeii is still the Black Pastel Yellow Belly Clown. I still get requests for the past few years. People are like, I want a male, I want a female, put me on a list. I hate lists because then I feel obligated. I have to go back to the list and go down through every person in the list. When you make a list, you go to the first person, oh, I spent my money, I don't have it anymore. But it took you 2 days, 2 or 3 days to get back to me. Then I go to the second person, don't hear anything. And I'm like, shit, it's so much easier to throw it on Morph Market. And the first person that comes with cash, that's yours. But I do honor the list. So, and repeat customers, I will put them on a list just because I owe them that for spending money with me. And if I even put new people on the list too, it's like I say I don't like them, but I kind of cave depending on how much you bother me. I mean, some people do bother you the shit out of you too. And I'm like, okay, clearly this guy wants something. I'll put him on the list. But it's one of those deals where with my gene, I'm trying to keep it simple. I'm trying to my bread and butter is mix it with everything. People are coming to me mainly for that. Now I do sell other things, but mix it with as much crap as you can. But the challenge is how many genes do I pull in with a limited amount of racks? And I have racks here, what's the comfortable number? Like you were saying, I probably have 75 adult tubs, and that's not a lot. That's basically, I'd fill that with 50 male, I'm sorry, 50 females, 20, 10 to 15 breeder males, and then some, odds and ends that, I'm always holding back and growing up. So I have a lot of grow outs, but the ones that actually are breeding, I have about 75 spots I can breed in. I don't breed 75 animals because, like I said, 50 of them would be females. Of those 50, maybe 35 or 40 are ready. And then of those 35 or 40 that I breed, I'll get 25 clutches. To me, 25 clutches is a lot with a full-time job, 2 young kids, and, just other shit. Like, I mean, I'm in here a lot doing stuff, and 25 clutches is great. But the thing with 25 clutches, and you hear it all the time, it takes the same amount of effort to clean and raise a normal as it does a $15,000 super high-end combo. Same deal, same effort. So why not make every tub is maximize each space to the fullest? And before, it just, I wasn't holding back enough. I wasn't spending money. And this is something Oz always told me. He's like, you've got to bring in new stuff. He's like, people know who you are. You don't have a problem selling stuff, but you got to bring in new genes every year. He's like, every year, get new genes. You got to stay on the cutting edge. And it wasn't until about, I don't know, 5 years ago that I started taking that into actual action. And now I have some pretty cool stuff that actually like really excites me, because when I'm excited about it, I'm putting more into it. I'm cleaning more. I'm feeding more. I'm doing everything more. And it's just like, I'm in the room more because I'm very excited about what's to come. And that's the key. You want to have that ambition, because when you lose it, you have a big room full of snakes that it's all about money, or I don't care. And I've never been there, but like I've seen people get burned out. And with my number that I have, I'm not going to get burned out. It's not going to like kill me. Worst case scenario, I lose a couple of hours when I wanted to be doing something else, but that's what I chose. This is what it is. But yeah, the comfortable number is what it is now. Although I'd like to have another like 70-30 ARS rack, I think would be ideal, especially with doing some of these. I have some cool ultramel clown things happening, and like the Desert Ghost clown. But I have some hypopide clown stuff happening and some visual. So that's something cool in the works. That's kind of it's a 3-gener, but it's my least favorite of the other ones. I like the clown combos better, but that's still, I mean, that's a clown combo, but clown pied combos sometimes can be a little bit, just depends on how much white you get and that kind of stuff. But with that being said, I need more rack.
Do you think the kind of boutique feel that you offer adds to the draw for your animals, though?
I think what it does is it allows me to have a lot of engagement with customers. But yeah, it does, because I know exactly when they feed. I know them so well because it is small and it's very scaled appropriately for me. I know I'm very impressed how some of these facilities run. And I mean that 100%. Like when I have payment plans and I have over 10 or 15 on payment plan, I have so many little visual checks and balances with those snakes, those tubs. I put markers on them. I'll write on the card. I'll have a spreadsheet that I keep on my computer, as well as Morph Mark is good because you can kind of track who's contacted you for the snake. But it's a lot of organizing because you're like, okay, shit, I got to ship these 3 guys tomorrow. And then the next day I have 2 guys. One's going to this hub. The other one's going to meet me down the road in person. And the worst case scenario, the nightmare scenario is double selling the snake. But since I have such a small collection, I don't think I'll ever fall into that because like I said, I'll put stickers on the tubs. I write on the card in a different colored ink than what I write the feedings. And to me, that's my system. It's old school. I'm not a tech guy. Even at my job, I'm getting out. I'm going to be pushed out because I'm getting older. And I remember being the young guy. I'm in the pharma industry. And I remember being the young guy in there and like, the cutting edge tech was like Microsoft Word and Excel. And now it's like all this shit that we have to learn. I'm like, man, I'm so burned out of learning new systems at work. And I can see the day when they're just going to be like, you're too technology illiterate for us to hire you or keep you employed. You're gone. So I feel like I'm a notepad guy. I always wrote stuff down and looked at it. Even my clutch records, I have it in a freaking spiral notebook. And I'll take pictures and I keep a file of all the clutches. But I write down everything because that's how I learn. I look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, I had this date, these eggs were laid. I got 4 females, 3 males, and then here's all the genes and here's who they're sold to. It's just easy, it's quick. But like I said, I'm refusing to adopt new technology as I get older. But I think yeah.
I'm sorry for that death squeal.
What was that?
That was my daughter being chased by her older brother and mom, and she let out a shriek of joy.
Oh, that's good. It was joy. Mine sometimes are definitely real fights, so it's.
We have those too.
Yeah.
It's I messed up and I let them watch. I let them watch WWE one time. And then my wife was like, "Oh, I want an Xbox. I want an Xbox." And I was like, "Well, when I was a kid, I played the wrestling games. Like those were one of my favorites. So we got the new wrestling game, and they watch it. And now I'm watching my 3-year-old jump off the top of the couch, landing on a pad of pillows with his older brother, and he's like trying to drop an elbow on him. I'm like, what are you doing? Okay, maybe not watch the video game now.
Yeah, it's funny. We did the same thing when I was a kid in elementary school. In the basement was like no holds barred because no one would go down there but the kids. And we had just old couches. And then we'd go find a mattress in like a storage room that we're not using, pull it out, and then we do like jump off the top of the couch and like the body slams and stuff. So it's.
I used to do it on a trampoline at my neighbor's house. Like we'd jump off of their roof onto the trampoline and like slam each other off and see if we could send each other off the trampoline.
Yeah, thinking about that crap now, it's like, ugh.
My body hurts.
Yeah, it does. It's funny how like your knees and your back, you're like, I couldn't even think of jumping off of like a stool at this point.
Yeah, I like 4 points of contact, climbing up to check the top tubs now. Make sure I'm not too close because I don't know. I think like the back of my head, I have this this little gremlin or something that tells me to put all the feisty ones on the top row. So they're right at face. But yeah, it's they have fun. That's all that matters. I'm glad they're having fun. But yeah, it's I think where were we at? You were talking about. I sidetracked both of us. Oh no.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because I was talking about like the number that was comfortable to me, and I was saying I didn't really get into it too much, but I am able to I'm able to answer a lot of questions, especially from customers. I give them what I feel is more than enough, like a lot of info. Like I'm not short with people, even people that don't buy from me. I'll have conversations with like there's guys now that have never bought a snake from me, and I'm like. This guy asks me questions all the time and I give him answers. I give him a lot of advice. I'm like, he'd never spent a dime with me, He probably will at some point. Maybe, well, maybe he will, maybe he won't. But like he's had a good experience with me. Maybe if he doesn't, he'll tell someone else. Like, yeah, that's a good. He's a good guy. I mean, he helps me out whenever I need help. And I think that's something I have the time to do because obviously I don't have a facility large enough to have employees. So everything comes through me. So if you ask me about a snake, I will know the answer immediately. And I'm able to interact with you on social medias and whatnot. I get, it's I don't have a ton of followers and stuff for Instagram, but I have enough that keep me busy throughout the day. And then with Morph Market, the cool thing is I also like, and I don't know if it's the best thing in the world to do it this way. It just kind of happens. But the amount of clutches that I get, say I get 25 clutches, 6 eggs each. That's about 150 babies, give or take. Some of them are just not Morph Market worthy, and I say that I mean they're just not high end enough. They're low end. There's no point in putting them on there because shipping is going to eat up most of the cost. So I sell them locally. I don't do shows, but I know people that do shows, so I'll sell them a lot of packages. And then that leaves me with about 80, 90, 100 animals I'll throw on Morph Market for the year. Probably like 100 and plus. But it's cool because it's May. And I have, I think, four animals for sale. I have one more, I think, that I want to put on here. But bottom line is I have 5 animals for sale. That's good because that means I've sold almost all of my 2021 stock that I wanted to sell.
Right.
But it's bad because if you get on my page after watching this to see what I have to offer, it's going to look unimpressive. And it's just because of the time of the year. May is not a good time for me. My best time to see my best availability is October through December. That's when all the banging stuff is coming out because everything hatches in like mid to late summer. And then I have a wave of like fall eggs hatching every year. I mean, I'll hatch into December every year. I just hatched a clutch. It was a February clutch that was a breeding last spring. I mean, it's crazy. Like I bred into like June and stopped, and then it hatched in February. Like they were laid in December, I think. But yeah, it's
So are you finding that because of your like the local to Maryland, or is that just
I don't know because it's not normal to some people that I work with in Maryland. I don't honestly I have no idea why because I've been in 2 different locations, 2 different houses, so I can't blame it on the house. I don't know if it's my breeding style, which is just putting 2 snakes in the tub and at a certain time frame and letting them go. And I don't really start early because I was starting in October for the longest time, September, October, and I still found that I was going later. So I was like, well, I'm just going to wait till the holidays. After Thanksgiving, I'll kind of eyeball and feel for follicles. And then I'll start pairing selective ones in November and then heavy in December, January, February, my heavy months, and March. And then from there, I'll feel the females. I'll kind of get a feel for like, of the 50, which ones do I concentrate on? The ones that give me no feeling of follicles, I'll keep an eye on them. But the ones that are developing, I'm hammering them with the males then because I'm like, I want to make sure that they're taken care of and they develop the eggs and everything comes out normal.
So even at 20 years, you're still palpating all your snakes.
Yeah, and that's something.
Awesome.
Well, it's cool because I know how to do it from 20 years of doing it, or 18 years, 2004. But I hear people say, like, I just listened to Bob on your show a month or so ago say, an ultrasound snakes, and I'll put a male on them. I only need to put the male on once, but I'll probably put him on again just to seal the deal. And I'm like, that would be freaking fantastic because I'm anal where I'm like, and I heard Oz say just recently, I put a male on 3 times for the most part, and then that's it. I'm like, I can't do 3. I need at least 4. And then really, if I've done it 4 and she's got follicles, I want to do it another time just to kind of seal the deal. But what I'm doing, and because I have a small collection, I can do that. But I'm also hurting my chances of having that male breed another female. Like he might be great with 3 females, okay with 4, but I want him to breed 6. If I want him to breed 6, I can't have him breed each one 5 times, or maybe I could, depending on what the male is, if he's eating, if he seems okay. But with an ultrasound, you're talking 12 breedings instead of 30, and that's so much easier on the male. Your odds of him hitting all 5 and going around twice is better because what you'll end up happening is he'll stop. and I have a spot nose clown that I was just using this year to make some, spot nose, yellow belly, black pastel stuff. And he's very selective on who he's breeding now. He was a machine, and then he just kind of conked out. And then I have some other clown combos, like all of my clown combos that aren't black pastel are conking out, which is fine. But my black pastel stuff is still going strong. The only problem is a lot of my females are black pastel clown and het clown combos, and I really don't want to go down that path of an all black. A super black pastel is not, it's appealing to me, but the reality of it is they're not coming out 100% all the time. You're talking 50% maybe. And shit, even the ones that come out looking fine, acting normal, are slow growers. They're just not the healthiest snakes. So I've tried to avoid that for the longest time because it's just not worth it. I mean, I don't want to kink snakes. I hate hatching snakes that don't thrive. It's not right to the snake, and I don't think it's not something that I want to do. But in
Have you
addition to
played
that,
with all those mediums? And what I mean by that is like all the variations of like incubation temps or like
I've
the
lowered them a
medium that
little
they
bit.
okay.
Yeah, like I was a little bit warmer back in the day, and it's only a degree or two. I'm down to 88 now, and
Okay.
88 degrees takes me 58 days, 60 days to pip. And it's funny because I used to do 89, 90, and they'd pip at like 54, 55. And those extra couple days, I don't know
Hmm.
if it had anything to do with them. I did have an issue years ago with room temp. My internal room temp was getting too hot because I'm in the basement now at this place, but I was on the second floor at my old place, and I thought it was good because it's always warm up there, but it was always too warm, and I would get a lot of infertile eggs. I get 1 year I got like 25% infertile eggs, and these were at the time high end clutches, and I was like, what the hell is going on? And I, I I think I heard Mark Mandic talking about it on a podcast, saying about like you gotta go lower. Like if you go high, your eggs are going to be infertile. I'm like, that's exactly what happened because my room was getting just way too hot. So the ambient temp with a hot spot was just too much, and I was getting a lot of not slugs, but just eggs with no veins. And that was a hard lesson that year. It was extra hard too because I had a lot of projects with Oz, and I felt bad because he had some high end shit with me, and I felt like I let him down a little bit. I mean, he was cool with it. He's always been cool to me. Um, but I felt like an asshole because I was like, man, not only am I shooting myself in the foot, but I'm shooting him in the foot, who's done so much and given me so much advice and snakes. Like he would throw snakes at me for helping him at a show. He's like, here's a spider. When spiders were still pretty cool, like they were still a desirable snake. He's like, for helping me, here's your payment. I'm like, holy shit, I got a spider now. All the stuff I can do with that. And the het red stuff was, a lot of the stuff was given to me for a lot less than market just because we knew each other prior to snakes. And we were like, we kind of came up together. So I owe a lot to him too, because he kept me motivated. I used to call him all the time, and I don't call him as much now because I do know personally how your time is, how valuable time is. But I'll call him every couple of months and we'll talk for an hour or two, just kind of catch up. But we talk the industry or work industry that we used to work in and just everything. And then we'll kind of hit snakes a little bit. But it's
Mm,
it's
that's one of
crazy.
the things I like to talk about is the circles that you keep, right? And I know you saw it with the Bob interview, but how I don't know how to relay this to other new people. Like I don't have the experience myself. I've only been breeding for 2 years. I've been keeping for a long time. I did pet store work for a long time, so I understood like
Mm,
basic husbandry, right? But the actual once you get to a level where you want to turn it into whether it's a hobby that's actually going to make money or a full out business for yourself, the people you keep around yourself and kind of like your circles and your friends are really what pushes you
yeah,
to be
definitely.
great,
Yep.
right?
And
And
it's like that with everything in life. Like having daughters now, I look back at who I hung out with when I was younger, and it's funny because I hung out with people, and it's just by happenstance. Like I hung out with some degenerates, but then I also hung out with people whose parents were like doctors and lawyers and orthodontists and very well respected professionals in the area. And when you hang out with a certain crowd, you kind of want to be like that, like them. And if they're successful, then you're most likely going to be successful because you all just bleed information to each other and it rubs off. So if you hang out with just people that are just unmotivated, negative, and just unwilling to push themselves, that's probably what you're going to do. And you're going to, I mean, if that's the life you want to live, it's you don't have to do much, but you don't get much out of it. I mean, I wouldn't
Right.
think so. So like I guess I don't have a ton of other people, and I know a lot of people in the industry, but I haven't hung out with a lot of people because I don't do shows. I found it easy with my number to do online. I think it's fascinating the people that do the shows, and the ones that are the most out there right now that are actually doing the shows are like Bob. I see him like posting that he's at
All
shows
over.
all the time. Steve's Morse, Steve Casino, um, Josh Lumberg. These guys are all out there just cranking, show after show, and I know they're just killing it. And I think that would just be fun to go to a show for a weekend in a city near you, like or not even near you, and just make thousands on snakes. But the problem is, I don't have the inventory. I don't have the bandwidth to do that. Like I could go to a show, I could book a show in 3 or 4 months, and by that time I could sell everything on Morph Market just because I'm spitting out a small number, selling a small number. I never have that big influx of animals. Partly because I keep it to a level that I'm comfortable with, not necessarily the level that's right for everyone, but for me right now, it's good. Again, I could expand a little bit, I think, still be comfortable and still hit some pretty nice goals in terms of satisfaction of what I'm hatching and financial. Because obviously, you want to go from like $1,000 a clutch, which was years ago, to say I want to average $5,000 to $7,000 a clutch, and I want to do 30 clutches. Well, if that holds true and I can do that, that's nice for me. That's comfortable. It's only me. I'm not going to shows. I'm not leaving my house, and that's good money. I mean, plus a day job. So that's kind of where my mind is now. It's like the most bang for your buck per tub. And to get there, you got to spend some money and you got to get lucky and hit some good snakes or holdbacks too. Because you don't want to just spend all your money and buy stuff. You want to make some stuff as well. You kind of want to have a nice balance of the two. And I find that I have in my head, a nice little arsenal of stuff that I like to work with and has a demand. And that's another thing too. Work with what you like, but also work with what people like too, and what's the public likes, or else you're just gonna have a shit ton of pet snakes or wholesale snakes that
No, for
you're
sure.
gonna get pennies on the dollar for.
We've been going. Wow.
Yeah, that's what I
One
was
of the
saying.
things. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was telling you, I'll just ramble if you don't stop me.
No, you're good. I love it. They're here for you, man. They can see me anytime they want. They're here for you. I let my guests talk. One of the things that I'm really pushing right now is husbandry and how we can enhance our husbandry. And over the years, I'm sure you've seen just a multitude of things, right? So, kind of in closing in our talks tonight, what's something that you would like to push out to the industry itself, something that you potentially like to see changed, or at least with new people when they're coming in, something to be cognizant of in their husbandry, because everyone says different ways of doing stuff, and obviously a multitude of ways work, but I think we've gotten so focused in on doing it specific
Yeah,
ways that we're kind of dead set on it has to be this way now.
I mean, I guess for me, what's worked for me is lower, like temps, for example. I do better with lower hot spots. I stay at 88, 89, which is probably a lot of people use that, but I know a lot of people are in the 90s. I like to go on the safer, lower side, but not cool or anything like that. Just from the experience that I had, that I was telling you about the eggs that cooked a few years back from the ambient temp being too high. But in addition to that, what I've really found over the years is I clean more. I used to be, I got into it. And it's like weekly cleanings. weekly water changes, which is just, I do it a lot more frequent now. And because you just see it's better, like, and I'll clean everything. Like, I don't let, like, back in the day, if I was in a hurry and I saw poo, I'd let the poo there. I'd go do my thing. I'd come back. I'd clean it. Hope that the snake didn't get messy. Now it's like I'm anal. When I see it, I stop. And a lot of times I'm like on the way out the door, and my wife's waiting for me or something. But I'm like, she doesn't bother me either. She lets me completely in here, do whatever, because she knows what I'm doing. And I'll do one, and then I'm like, oh shit, that tub looks like something. Because sometimes I'll put the poo right next to the. You can see it. I'm like, I got to do that.
Right.
Or spilled water. I can't leave that spilled water. I've got to deal with that right now. So I guess it's just being cognizant of, if your snake needs attention, give it the attention now. Don't wait till later. And I don't know that there's like studies that show that if I wait 8 hours or 10 hours, something bad will happen. It's just good practice, I think. Change your water as much as you can that suits you, because the water, it gets stale. I mean, I work in a biotech pharma company, and we do daily water testings. If you take a bottle of water and set it out on the counter overnight and you test it for bacteria the next day, it's going to pop, or it'll have endotoxin or something in it. And if you think about that, your dog, your cat, it applies to anything. Keep the water as fresh as you can. And with the snakes that I have, that's another reason why less is better for me, because then I can kind of be having that just industry knowledge of like how water grows shit pretty quickly. It helps me be a little bit more anal with them. And if I had thousands, I'd be busy all day. I wouldn't have time to do anything. And that's not what I want. I want to have time to enjoy what the snakes have provided, what my day job provides, and just like enjoy myself outside of the snakes as well as with the snakes. And with rotten water and poo, they are going to get sick. So it's like, I would just say keep up on your cleanings. I've gotten a lot more anal as I've been in this this hobby industry over the years, to the point now where I think I'm pretty good with keeping them as healthy as I can in a tub.
Heck yeah.
That's my little spiel. And because at the beginning it wasn't like that. It was more loose, I think, and people weren't really. It was a lot more.
I think that's the appeal that a lot of people use.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially pet stores, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like pet stores will say, well, you only have to feed it once a week. You only have to really change its water once a week. You only have to do
You don't have
this.
to pay any attention to it.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm looking at them all the time because I love to see how the females grow and they glow before they ovulate and all that. I'm looking for those signs all the time. And it's just like I have fish tanks. I have South American cichlids that I love. I love the America's cichlids. So I'm doing water changes constantly. And then I set tanks up in my kids' room and say it's their tank, but then I'll take control of it. And then they don't have to do anything other than feed it. And I'll do all the water changes, the filter changes, like cleanings. So it's just one of those things that, like, the fish and the snakes are in an enclosed spot. They can't get out. I mean, I have a big tank and everything, so I don't feel bad for the fish, and they're well fed and they're not getting eaten by other fish. But I want to keep them as healthy as possible. So water changes is the main thing. You keep that fresh flow coming in, and don't overstock. But I'm getting into a whole nother topic now.
No, you're good, bro. You're good. In your 20 years, you've seen a multitude of things, I'm sure, even with a small collection. Probably some crazy illnesses pop up, not necessarily in your collection, but in other collections, right? Or like some freak injuries that happen. What's one of the craziest things that you saw or you heard about and that really drove home to you?
Oh, this kind of goes into your question you had before about what advice do I have. It's that picture on the internet of that snake that was supposedly eaten by a rat. There's a ball python picture that's been floating around for almost 20 years, where the whole backside, just both sides of the spine, are just shredded. And it supposedly it was left with a rat in the tank. And I actually was a dummy who, with my king snake that I was telling you about earlier, I was in college. I was down at University of Maryland, and I went away for the weekend. So I threw a mouse in there. I thought the snake ate it, and it didn't, because I had some hides and shit. And I was absent-minded with it. I went home, and my roommate, I had three roommates, but one stayed back at the apartment in College Park. He was terrified of snakes, and I was at my hometown. And he called me up, and he's like, "Dude, there's a mouse attacking your snake." I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "There's a mouse, a white mouse is riding your snake around the cage, is biting it." So I don't know how he did it, but he was able to get the mouse out. Terrified of snakes. I'm like, "You got to get it out, or I have to drive an hour and a half down the road to do it." And I didn't want to drive an hour and a half back then, but I convinced him to get the mouse out. And from there, that was a lesson that could have been really bad had no one been there. But it goes back to like that when I do feed live. I'll throw everything in the tanks, in the tubs, and I'll leave. I'll shut the lights out. I'll go out and anywhere outside the snake room, 20, 30 minutes, come back. Usually 20 minutes, come back, then I'll start checking. So typically in 20, 30 minutes, the rats are not going to attack the snake. That comes mainly out of a hunger, I think, kind of a hunger desire. They want to eat something, so they're going to eat the snake. And that's like a day or two later. But also another thing to do is if you have hides and stuff and you peek in there and you think the snake ate the rat and sometimes the snake's under the hide, I'm always very anal, and this is a good lesson too. If you see the snake out and you didn't see it coil, you didn't hear it hit the rat, you were out for 15 minutes, you came back in, check the hide, because the rat could be under the hide with the snake's lower end, and you just don't want to leave it in there. I would most likely find it the next day, because I always do walkthroughs all the time. I'm always in here listening, looking, and I have found rats years ago that happened to, and it was just a lesson. It was like, okay, how do I prevent that? Well, I check every corner of that cage if I physically didn't see that snake coil. And a lot of times, like I said, when I'm throwing them in, I'm hearing them hit, so I know all these snakes that hit. And the ones that don't hit immediately, they're the ones that I make a mental note of. When I come back in, I go right to those first, because I'm like, I didn't hear it strike. And 50% of the time, sometimes it does when the lights go out and I just leave it quiet. And then other times it didn't. So you got to get them out. And then the rat is either, in a bad mood, or it's cool. But I don't like feeding live, honestly. That's the one downside about the ball pythons is I really like rats. I enjoy rats as pets. My kids I've kept some rats for my kids, and it sucks because I crossed that line, and I wish I didn't, because they are one of the coolest little animals that you can get. They're like a little dog. When they get used to you and they gain your trust, they are the coolest little pocket animal you could have. I have these rats, and it's so weird. I hate to think about it, but I'm petting my pet rats, and I baby them, and I feed them like healthy rat food, but I give them treats and stuff, and they'll sit on my shoulder and they'll lick me. But yet I'm also in here feeding live rats to the snakes. So that's the one thing about breeding the snakes that I really hate. And I wish it wasn't the case. Now I could do frozen thawed. It's just easy to get live rats where I'm at right now. And these snakes are easier to feed live rats. But
so
I definitely,
you bring all yours in, I'm assuming, from
I don't breed any.
right?
From
Because he has
Oz's rat.
his rodent, or
I get some from there, but I have another guy that I've gotten for years out of Pennsylvania, and I've just stuck with him mainly because he has an assortment. I have a couple picky eaters that'll only eat mice, and to get some from this guy with the mice and then some from another guy, it's just double work for me. So
well, it's that, and it's the smell. There's something about like what the diet of the rodent itself comes out in the rodent. I've noticed that. I've been breeding now for, or probably, this is my second time doing it, but we've probably been at it again for about 8 months. And I've changed the diet effectively for the rodents 2 or 3 times now. And just the overall smell of the animals, because I hold all of mine, like regardless of their breeder or not, which I 100% feel you. Like I hate, I hate feeding nights because of that. But
it's weird.
The ones that I give off as pets and stuff like that as well, it's like I have to make sure that it's not going to bite your kids or bite you or something like that. So I hold everything. All of mine are extremely freaking tame, but their food puts off a different scent or different mannerism sometimes, and
Yeah.
the snakes pick up on it, like beyond what I would think. You
Huh.
know, like
That's interesting.
our sense of smell isn't that great, but I can tell you, like right now, just because of the overall cost of it, I am feeding a dog food. It's giving me the same output as Missouri was at the time. I'm
Hmm.
doing, but I do a lot of supplementation. Like they get a lot of fresh vegetables. They get a lot of uh,
Yeah.
treats throughout the week. They get the black oil sunflower seeds, things like that, right? Um, but the smell has changed to them. So the first couple of weeks when I changed it, the rats were hesitant because it didn't smell like the rodents that they were used to. And now that they're used to that smell, they're
No,
after
that's
them.
interesting.
I'm not seeing like any health defects and anything like that, but there's an actual smell that comes with each rodent. So the fact that you're trying to pull everything from one source, I think, is really important.
Yeah,
The people in
and
California, I don't know how they do it because it seems like they draw from everywhere.
uh, and I don't think they can have. Can they have ASFs in California?
No, ASFs are illegal in California.
And they're so good because they'll get. That's like my last resort because they're more expensive and they're less cost effective, but the snakes eat them. I mean, it's. I have a couple high end females that I have to feed ASFs to, but they're fat. I mean, the snakes are big and fat and healthy, and you know, but I need to get all three when I order. I need a few ASFs, some mice, and mainly rats. Ideally, I want everything on rats, but sometimes if something goes to mice, I'll just buy them. I'll feed it three or four mice, as many as it'll eat. I'll keep throwing them in there, to the equivalent size of a small or two small rats, whatever it is. But I always try to get them once they lay eggs. That's kind of the trick. Like you get them all cleaned up, throw them back in, then you offer them a rat. And a lot of times that first meal after lay, they'll take a rat, and you might be able to get them back on rats that way. So that's kind of a trick, that I've learned over the years. If you want to get everything back off of mice, which ideally it's better to feed once than three or four times the same snake. It's just less time, and ultimately it's probably costs less too to feed it one rat versus three mice, depending on who you're getting them from.
Right.
But yeah.
Are you strictly like, except for your mousers, one small meal a week, or what how do you
It
do it through
depends on how
your
big they
breeding
are.
season?
Well, yeah, during breeding season, as a females, and I've kind of just taken this off of what I've heard from some of the bigger names. I know Brian Barczyk was a proponent of feeding more your females as they're getting ready, as you're breeding them, and you can feel them, the follicles growing. They need the extra food to kind of support and develop the egg. So sometimes I'll double up smalls, or I'll order every couple of weeks. I'll order half smalls, half mediums, and I don't feed mediums to males. It's no point in that. I'm not trying to get gigantic males, but
Right.
with my females, a medium rat is a pretty decent size for the mediums around here for what I have. I don't have any. I cycle out a lot. Because I have limited space, I don't have many older females, and that's kind of the name. That's kind of what I'm going for, because the oldest female I have is a 2009 pied. I just can't get rid of her. She produces 8 to 10 egg clutches every year, and I can put like a black pastel yellow belly pied on her or anything like that and just make money. I mean, and make cool stuff. It's just she makes good clutches, and she's 12 years old or 13 years old now, but it's most of the time I don't have them that old. Typically, after 5 6 years, I'm replacing them. I'm that spot was great at the time for her, but now I have the next version of her ready to go. So
Right.
depending on what it is, too, I'll hold them a little bit longer than 5 6 years. But they all have kind of an expiration date, and they're still good breeders, and I'll sell them to people. I guess one of my goals now is to have het in everything.
Mhm.
Obviously, visual recessive in everything is the ultimate goal, multiple visual recessives, but shit, that's many years down the road. Currently, I'm trying to cycle out all of my codoms, doms, whatever they are, and have something at least het for clown or het for ultramel or het for desert ghost. Ideally, from there, I'm trying to step into double hets too. Double het female, double visual male is kind of the formula that I'm working with, and that seems to be the most cost effective. And it's 1 in 4 shot. I think if you do a double visual to a double het, it's a 1 in 4, right? So that's pretty good odds. I mean, and you're not dropping a shit ton of cash to get all double visuals. You're making them, and I still have so many nice like 3, 4, 5 gene females that I'm like, I'd like to get rid of you, but I want to put this ghost pied or hypopied on you and make double het and hope that I hit 3 or 4 year genes and then go down that road, hold back a female. So I'm still doing that because I don't, certain stuff that I want to. Go ahead.
How difficult has it been to work into like a double or the thought of a triple recessive with you being at 70?
That's the biggest problem. It's difficult because pulling the trigger is what I need to do. Like, and as I see more and as I learn more, my plans always change. Like, for example, this year I have a really pretty hypopide. She's just a really yellow hypopide, like crazy looking. And I kept looking at the card. I'm like, there's got to be yellow belly in here. There's got to be something else. There's not according to the breeding that made her. So she's just a phenomenal looking hypopide, probably like 2,500 grams. So I was putting a Black Pastel pied het hypo on her to hit on Black Pastel hypo or pied hypo Black Pastels. That's a cool snake. There's not many of those out there. I want to hold some back. I want to sell some. But then after I put him on her once, I saw, what was I looking at? I had just any clown. Like I was like, I should have taken like I have a clown, leopard, yellow belly, Black Pastel. I was like, that would have been so much cooler to throw that on her because then I would have hit triples. Everything would be a triple head. And then obviously Black Pastel is priority. Leopard is a good one. Yellow belly. I hope that I get a nice handful of females there. But like you said, where am I going to put them all? I have to bring in some racks because that's a whole nother. It's not another project because I got that floating around anyway. But that would have gotten me some different stuff, some different combos, and the clutch that she'll give me if she goes, and she's kind of going late. I'm not sure she's on the border right now. Will be good because I would love to see Black Pastel hypos, Black Pastel pieds, hypopieds, and then all three. It's still going to be a very nice clutch, but down the road, I keep thinking you got to play the long game. Like everything short term is cool. It's instant gratification, but it's not going to make you stand out from the pack. It's not going to you're not going to ultimately get where you want to go just making the quick, easy combos. I mean, some of them I still do that are just cool. And I know that are cool looking. I like them. They sell. They're easy. But I'm fading more away from that and more into 3 years, 5 years. What do I want to do in 5 years with this stuff? What do I need to bring in to make it like next level in 5 years? Because like I was telling you earlier with like that Pompeii kind of starter kit, I have a lot of that stuff. And when somebody big like Justin or Miguel or Oz produces something crazy and everybody like loses it over that snake, I'm like, well, shit, I'm very close to that snake, but I need to get like Cypress or Stranger or, I have some confusion, but like that kind of stuff, it's like, I need to pull in that gene. That's a newer gene. I mean, Cypress isn't super new, but it's now just getting worked into the clown projects. Pretty cool. And same with Special. Special's not new at all, but it's new to me. I've never worked with it, but I would like to work with it. And those subtle genes are kind of the key. They're like the secret ingredient, like the red stripe, yellow belly. They don't look great on their own, but damn, they just really amp up like the colors and patterns and certain combos. And it's undeniable, like Cypress. Super Cypress is cool, but Cypress on its own, it looks okay. Special on its own, it's okay. But then when you start really hitting unlocking those formulas that we might not even know exist yet, that's the exciting part about this.
Okay. I like that. I think that's a good place to start wrapping this.
Yeah, that's cool.
I've kept you for longer than I promised I was gonna.
That's fine. I'm all amped up now, so I'm not
like
TV and stuff.
There's so obviously you said you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram. How
Mhm.
do people get a hold of you the best, Tom?
Probably the easiest way is, I mean, Facebook Messenger. I get like that's how you got a hold of me. I get a lot from there, and it's just Tom Barnhart on Facebook. You'll see me. It's pretty easy to find me. Instagram is starting to get a little bit, get a little more momentum there, and I'm fine with either. However, it's easy for people to get a hold with me of me. That's where I want to be. So Instagram is Tom Barnhart 27 because Tom Barnhart was taken. So I'm Tom Barnhart, all one word, 27. And also through Morph Market, just send me an email through there too. If you're not on social media, just get on Morph Market and it'll send it to my Gmail account, which is Tom Barnhart at Gmail. So it's
Keeping it
pretty easy. I
simple.
was one of the early Gmail accounts. So I was able to get my name, which is pretty cool.
Okay, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, sir, I really appreciate you taking the time this evening and giving us a lot of knowledge, giving us some good stories, and just I know a lot of people really look up to your line and look up to you as a breeder. So the fact that you took the time to uh,
Oh, thanks.
just
I feel
spread,
I feel,
uh,
like I don't feel, yeah, it's funny. It's funny to hear that, but it's I guess it's people come to me for the Black Pastel, which I love, and I'm trying to do more with it. So I definitely appreciate all the kind words and everyone that supports me and the project. Like I said, I wish I had an army of morphs to plug into. I wish Justin would buy a Black Pastel from me if you're listening, and plug it into some stuff and say, "Hey, this is do a video," because that would set some sales off. But I know Oz works with it. Mark Mandic has some. Like there's some big hitters out there that have it, and Levance has some. It's there's enough names out there that are doing some good stuff with it, and then I'm trying to always do as much as I can with what I have. So it's definitely I'm honored that people like my line.
well,
I didn't name it either. I'm not that like conceited and like you know other people started calling it the Barnhart line, and I just went with it, obviously, because I'm like, call it what you want. It's a line that I work with. I got it from a wild captive hatched animal, no knowledge of the parents, but I'm definitely not one of those conceited guys. I'm like, oh, you got to call it my line. Like it's got to be my name. That was not me, just for
that's
the
freaking
record.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's freaking awesome. All right, guys, give it up for Mr. Tom Barnhart. Thank you so much again, sir.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys, that was a freaking outstanding episode. That's something I'm probably gonna have to go back and watch myself, just because there's some information that I really am gonna have to look back at and fully process. Thank you guys so much for watching. Uh, as you guys know, husbandry is a huge aspect of everything we do, and I actually forgot to do this, and I'm going to get yelled at by my sponsors later, I'm sure. But here's the shout out to our sponsors. Here at Outside the Clutch, we're honored to be sponsored by VivTech. Are you ready for innovation? Tired of the same boring product that's been used for 30 years? Ready to give your reptiles and amphibians the UVB they really deserve? Then look no farther than VivTech. Their 3-watt LED bulb provide the UV rays your animals have been missing. With 3 bulbs to fit your pet's climate needs for optimal husbandry, plus a dimmable feature, and it's the only bulb with a 2-year warranty in the industry. So what are you waiting for? Go to vivtechproducts.com today, use code FCLUTCH0322 for 10% off to provide your animals the best care they've ever had. All right, like I said, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. Next week we're gonna have another OG from the industry. I'm super excited about this. We're gonna be talking about mentorship and educational parties. You guys could take a guess at who it is. Love y'all. I appreciate your support. We'll see you next weekend. Bye.